Hello, I'm Marion Lafont. I'm working at CEA DAM, and I will present you the work that I've done during my internship. It was about trapping a keyboard, and this presentation is like a tutorial, and I will present you all the work that I've done from scratch. So start, we can ask ourselves a question. Why did we want to trap a keyboard? It's because today, keyboards and other devices are like small computers. They are programmable, they have large memory spaces and significant computing power. We can call them smart devices. And as an IT security engineer, we need to know what are the risk of the use of such components, and if it is possible to attack these devices, what are their difficulties? So, this presentation will present you a trap. So, which trap? A keylogger. And our example of keylogger will do this attack. Our target write his password on the keyboard. Then when the target type the password, the keyboard store all the pressed key. And you come after and ask the keyboard to replace the password. But we want a remote attack possible. So we doesn't want any hardware modification, and we want perform this attack through USB. So I present you my beautiful keyboard. It is a Corsair Strafe RGB. It's a USB standard keyboard with two specifications. You can set colors on the key, and you can perform some macro. We know that there is a microchip inside, and the keyboard is running thanks to firmware. So to analyze the keyboard, we have to analyze the firmware. So we can ask ourselves again some question. Is it possible to collect this firmware? And if it is possible to collect this firmware, we have to understand how the keyboard works. For example, what happens when a key is pressed, how the press key is determined, and how does the host know which key is pressed. And in order to modify it, we have to understand if it is possible to modify the keyboard, and in which place we could place the keyboard, the firmware in the modified firmware in the chip. So let's start with obtaining the firmware. So in our case, we are lucky. We have a software with the keyboard, which allow us to set some colors on the key and perform some macro, but it also allows to make some update of the firmware. What does the software? It downloads the firmware from the constructor website in HTTPS. It stores it into the temporary directory. Then it sends it through USB to the chip, and then it deletes it from the temporary directory. But it does all these things in not encrypted, so we can just copy the firmware from the temporary directory. We will see that later that we can use some other ways to collect this firmware. So now we are happy, we have our firmware, we can start to analyze it, and we perform some standard analysis, and we see that it's an ARM code, and it's 40 kilobytes long, so okay, it's written in assembly, so maybe we can try to disassemble it. So let's go. So we use IDA, which is our disassembly tools, and we find some simple function like this one. So it's a basic function with, for example, here you have some movement between registers. Register 1 go to register 3, and we see that all over the function we have just a register movement. So we just look the function and say what this function is doing, and in 3 seconds, I'm not sure anyone can say, okay, this function do this thing. If you can, you're a hero. I try. I didn't understand its behavior. So I ask myself how I can simplify this analysis. So I decide to emulate this function. So to do that, I use MIASM. MIASM, which is a reverse engineering framework written in Python and developed at CEA-DEM. You can play with some binaries, and there is an intermediate language, and you can do a lot of other stuff. So I decide to emulate this function with MIASM. So I put some input to the emulation, and I look at the output, and we see, obviously I didn't this on only 3 examples, but it's just for the presentation. So here we see, for example, that 10 divided by 5 is equal to 2, and the remainder is 0. It's the same here. 21 divided by 5 is equal to 4, and the remainder is 1. And it's the same here. 55 divided by 3 is equal to 18, and the remainder is 1. So through this emulation, we can understand that this function is a division with these inputs and outputs. And if we reverse this function, we see exactly a simple division algorithm. So we did it on some simple function, and we can now understand some basic function, but it doesn't help us to understand the behavior of the firmware. We don't know how we can determine which key is pressed, and it's this thing we have to understand in order to modify the firmware, in order to create our keylogger. So we move to more interesting function, like this one. You have a zoom here, and we see that there is some computation on addresses, and at the first time I see these addresses, I don't understand what are there. They are not mapped in the firmware. So I made some research, and I find that these addresses are hardware register addresses, and to understand their behavior, we have to understand we have to know on which microcontroller this function is running. So now we have to search for the chip used in our firmware. So it is our next step. So we have several shops to find the microcontroller used in the firmware. You can open the keyboard, read the name of the chip, and get the corresponding documentation. Or you can work with Fabrice, which is perverse enough to forbid you to do this. So you have to work with the firmware and find some information in the firmware to guess what is the chip inside the keyboard. So for this, we use the information we have. For example, we know that the firmware is written in ARM, so we are looking for some chip with ARM processor. For example, we see the interrupt vector at the beginning of the firmware. The interrupt vector is a vector which contains all the addresses for the interruption. And it looks like a Cortex M0 interrupt vector. And we can use all the access component register, the same that I show you before, because they are microcontroller dependent, and that can be used to fingerprint a chip. So in the next slides, I will show you 3 different documentation. And we will focus on the GPIO addresses. So here, in this chip, we see that the GPIO addresses are here. And in this chip, it's here. And in this third chip is here. And we see that in the 3 documentation and in the 3 chips, the addresses of the GPI, of the hardware register of the GPIOs is not at the same place. So we can look all over our firmware to see if we find some addresses and compare to the different documentation to look if there is some correspondence. And you can also notice that there is some reserved addresses here, here, here. And we cannot write or load something from these addresses. So for example, if you analyze your firmware and you see that there is some addresses that are, for example, this one, you can just say that this chip is not the one used in your keyboard. So now, to know which chip there is in our firmware, we have to list all the used addresses in our firmware. So, okay, it's a simple case. Here, the used addresses is clear. We see that it's this one plus 4. So, okay. But there is some more difficult cases. Here, for example, to know which are the right-hand addresses, you have to perform a computation. So I remember you that we are working with the 40 kilobytes firmware. So obviously, I don't want to perform all this computation by hand. So maybe we can script it. So to do that, I use again Miasm. Here we see a simple beginning of a function with some addresses, and here there is exactly the same. This is exactly the same code, but with another representation. And we see, for example, that the register 5 here is used with, for example, plus 0xa and here plus 0xc. And this register 5 is the one I signed here. So maybe we can perform some constant propagation to compute all the addresses. So I use Miasm and the constant propagation algorithm, and we have this result. So we are happy. We see the addresses. So now we can list them. To list them, I choose to put some comments in IDA and put some keyword. For example, here, add info. So now in IDA we have this view. And to list all the addresses of the firmware, you have to make a research from this keyword. And if I do this search, we have a result like that. And for our 40 kilobytes firmware, we are more than 3,000 resolution of constant. So hopefully we didn't this by hand. So now we can use all the addresses we find and compare them to the documentation to find the chip. And we did that, and we find that the chip used by our keyboard was the LPC11U3X. So we are happy. We have the firmware, the chip, and now we can start to analyze. The firmware. But each time, for example, each time we see new addresses, we have to go to the documentation to see, okay, it's these addresses with this code, okay, it's a USB data buffer start address. So now we can guess that the function is working with USB. But it's cool, but each time we look for a new address, we have to go to the documentation. And again, it's long and we don't want to do that. So we can, for example, generate the command in IDA, not with the add_info keyword, but with this documentation. And we did this, and we have this in IDA. Now you can look on all over your functions, and we will see these comments all over your disassembly view, and it will help you to understand the firmware behavior. And we can also generate all the documentation, and it's better to understand the behavior. So by using our command, we look I2C, GPIOs, USB, and UART functions. So okay, now we have to try to reverse and analyze some of this function. For example, we start with I2C and GPIOs, and we found some interesting components. For example, 3 I2C slates, loop and structure are 144 elements. So okay, it's interesting, but it's very mysterious, and we don't know what are the elements, and we have to try another approach to understand what are the behavior of the keyboard. So as I said before, you have all of these functions, and for example, we can use USB, because with USB we can capture the traffic, and you can analyze the packets and look the concrete the data of the packets and make research of this data into the firmware. So let's try with USB capture. So here we have two transactions from the update through USB, and it is two of the main. There is a lot of transaction in this update, but here is the two first transaction, and we can see that the firmware content is present in the packet. So we are okay. It's an update, so the firmware is sent to the keyboard, so it's not a surprise. But we have some code here that are used by this custom protocol, and we can, for example, look for this code in the firmware. And if we look at the purpose of the bytes 7F and 070D F0 in the USB firmware, we find a big function which performs which have different behavior depending on the bytes the function receives. So we can guess that this code and these codes are USB protocol code to our firmware. And through the updates to USB, we discover a mechanism. This mechanism is called EAP, which is in-application programming. It's an internal mechanism implemented in the ROM, which allows you to program the flash from the firmware. So we discover that we have the possibility to tamper the flash, and there is no code signature in the use of this function. So now we know that we can flash the flash with our own firmware. So good. We find that we can modify the firmware, so it could be possible to to create our keylogger. So now let's go back on the function we find when we look for the 7F and the 007 codes from the custom USB protocol. So we want to know the feature of this function. So we have several possibilities. We can try other features where the host sends USB packets to the keyboard, and we can check if the protocol code are present in the function. Or you can modify the firmware to check the function behavior. As we know, we can modify the firmware now, but it implies to rewrite part of the firmware. We will do the both case. So let's try with the first one. For example, we use the packet send when the host set some keys in color. So we look for the code, the USB protocol code we find in the packet, and we find this code in the USB parsing functions. So this function, we can confirm that this function seems to be used when the host color the keyboard, and in general when the host sends USB packets. And we understand some other information, like for example, the color is sent from the chip with I2C, and we understand that the three I2C slaves are in reality for the three colors components. So thanks to USB, we understand the meaning of the three slaves. The one we find very mysterious at the beginning. And now we can, now we understand how the LEDs work. We can control them, which is not the best way to collect information which is not the best way to collect information, but we can use these features, for example, for debug and for debug. Now move to the second case. We can modify the firmware. So we choose the new news protocol code by the function, the protocol code 7E, and we say to the keyboard, now when the host sends you 7E, you are, for example, reinitializing the keyboard. We did it and it works. Or, for example, put in color the key G, and it works also. So we have proved that this function is the USB parsing function. But just a quick reminder of our trap. We want that our target write his password, and we want to collect the key written by the target, and we want to store the keys, and then we want to replace the key. So if we look at the remaining steps we have to do to perform our keylogger, we see that we have to collect the use key, we have to store the data, and we have to extract the data. And we have already done these two items because we have the possibility to modify the firmware. We prove it with the previous case, and we can communicate with the device thanks to the USB parsing function. So now let's move on extracting data from the chip. So how can we extract data through USB? We can rewrite the firmware and create our custom packets, but we want, if possible, reuse existing code. We can use the USB buffer sent when a key is pressed, but it is the main features of our keyboard, so if we can modify it, it's better. And we can use the USB descriptor. The USB descriptor allow your USB devices to represent itself. It gives a lot of information, like for example its product and its vendor ID, and there is a lot of other descriptors. and it allows the host to understand, for example, that your device is a keyboard, and to understand what he has to do when the keyboard send it some packets. And here I want to show you that all the descriptors are stored in the modifier part on our firmware. For example, here we see 1B1C, 1B20, which is the ID product and the vendor ID. Here we can see here, for example, 0112, which corresponds to 18. It's in hexadecimal. So we have this thing here. So all the USB descriptors are stored in our firmware. So we can maybe modify them. And we have also the string descriptor, which it's the things you see when you connect for example, your keyboard on your computer. And this string descriptor seems interesting because the host can ask several times this string descriptor is a USB descriptor value, which is not very important to the configuration of the keyboard. And as I said before, it's stored in the modifiable section of the firmware, and we can modify it. And when we analyze the code, we see that the string descriptor is in reality only used once, and after is copied into a buffer in RAM. And it's this RAM buffer which is sent each time the host sends the string descriptor, which each time the host asks the string descriptor. So we can update the memory content of this RAM buffer to send a new string descriptor each time the host asks it. So we try to validate this thing, and to perform this validation, we modify the firmware to perform a dump memory through the string descriptor. So to do that, I choose, like before, a command code 7E with a memory address. And each time the firmware receives this packet, he puts a fixed size buffer from the memory specified in the USB packet to the string descriptor buffer. And then I wait a small delay that because of the interruption, we have to wait that the buffer is okay. And then when the host asks for the string descriptor, the host gets the data he wants in the string descriptor. So now we know that we have the possibility to extract data through the string descriptors. So we are happy. Now we have 2 items left. We have to collect the use key and to store the data. Here, there is just a memory map of the flash. We see that there is 3 useful sections. The non-modifiable firmware, non-modifiable by the USB software update software. We are running firmware and new firmware. When you update the firmware, we put the new firmware in the new firmware part, and then when the keyboard is restart, the new firmware go to the running firmware. And if we analyze the current running firmware, we see that there is space left at the top of it. So we can, for example, if it's possible to collect the key, put the collected key in this space. So now we have just to find how to collect the use key. And now we can use several methods. We can observe the USB transaction when a key is pressed, but we have already done this method before, so we are moving to the second one, which is find the involved component. Because in the previous analysis of our firmware, we see that E2C are used for color, USB is used for host communication, and UART seems to be, and there is UART and GPIOs, but UART just seems to be initialized, and there is not a lot of function which deal with UART. But we have a lot of function dealing with GPIOs, and we see that there is 144 iteration in this GPIOs function, like in I2C function, and the one we saw in I2C function was for the keys. So maybe we can go into GPIOs and try to understand the function and ask ourselves what did the function. But we have a problem, because our keyboard are 104 keys, and we have only 54 pins in our GPIOs. So how is it possible? And by analyzing our firmware, we find an algorithm, this one, which activates pin from P0 to P11. And when one of these pin is activated, is look if pin from P12 to pin 23 is activated. And if one of them is activated, it collects the key from this pin 1 and pin 2, and it sends the key to the host. So, okay, which this algorithm, we can guess that the key are in this representation. And now we understand that, for example, when we activate pin 2, and if key A is pressed, here we have a contact, and it activates P13. So if we look at all these pins, we see P13 is activated, which means A is pressed. But we found also another weird compartment in these scan key functions. The function checks the key state, and after each press or release, the GPIO seems ignore for 50 loop cycles. So it's weird. And if we try to understand this behavior, we realize that is a GPIO debouncer, and in fact, when you press the key, there is some noise, and to remove that noise, the GPIO is waiting a small time to collect again the pressure of release of the keys. So thanks to the statistical analysis, we infer the hardware design of our keyboard. Okay, now we are happy. We have all the steps to perform our keylogger. We can collect the press key because we understand the GPIO's function work. We perform some tests to verify this. For example, we color the keys as the keys are pressed. I can show you. Each time a key is pressed, the key, I don't know if you see, the key is enlightened, so okay. And test passed. And another test was to send arbitrary keys to the host. Obviously, I choose randomly, Windows plus R. And I try to do this on the keyboard, and it works. So we have all the steps to perform our keylogger. So we can perform a keylogger. Before to show you a video demonstration of how the keylogger works, I can show you that, for example, in this keyboard, if I press, so I will just, if I press, thank you. if I press if I press Control Alt Sup, it will start the keylogger. And for example, I can write Gruac. Where is the C? Okay. And now, if I ask my super keyboard to tell you what I type, and I say, we play it, he will play Gruac. Thank you. So, I perform a demonstration in a Windows environment. I perform a demonstration in a Windows environment. So here I do the same thing. The target write his password. So the target is logged into his session. And then we ask our keyboard to do the same thing to replace the password. So we see the same thing. Now our target go take a coffee. And we arrived. And we say, please replace the password and send it back to the... And we see that nobody typed. And we can log it again. So I want you to show you some interesting I found by in analyzing this firmware. The in-system programming, which are a set of functions implementing in the ROM, which allow to program the flash with from USB or UART. And there is some code reprotection which limits these features. We can, for example, use this to read the firmware. So, for example, in the first slide, I show you that I collect the firmware through the update software, but we can collect the firmware with these features. And there is some protection of this mechanism, but there is some possibility to bypass the CRP. I invite you to see this conference because it shows it how to bypass this protection. And another interesting thing is that I showed you before that all the USB descriptors are stored in the modifiable part of the firmware. So we can modify the keyboard presents itself to the computer. So for example, the keyboard can present itself as a mouse, a hard disk, a network interface card, and which allow us to perform a lot of USB attacks on this keyboard. So now, how can we protect ourselves from this attack? We can try to make things harder for the attacker. For the end user, you can use basic keyboards with no update permission, just a basic keyboard. Or you can add USB rules to limit the device authorized on the host, but we see that we can bypass this and put the product ID and the vendor ID we want on the keyboard. And you can use two-factor authentication because if the attacker wants to log into your session, you have to do the keylogger and to attack the other authentication way, so it's more complicated. And for the constructor, it can add a signature verification to make things more difficult. But keep in mind that a keylogger can be performed by modifying the hardware. And in conclusion, it was not too hard to trap this keyboard firmware. We are various attacks families we can perform on this keyboard. This can be expanded to all the USB devices using microcontroller. So as an IT security engineer, I need to consider, and you need to consider USB devices as potential threat. But keep in mind that the hardware can also be trapped. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do you have questions?
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation and the cool demos. Do you have studied if you show that you can, for instance, communicate between the host and the keyboard? Have you studied if you can do something to recognize the host from the keyboard through, for instance, USB, some USB exchange fingerprinting or something like that, so that, for instance, your keylogger only activates on the intended target or stuff like that?
You mean if I use my keyboard on several computers, it
Yes.
can check, it can know on which computer the keyboard is logged? Mm-hmm. I didn't try to do this, but I don't know. I don't remember if the host sends some things to the keyboard, but we can imagine as we can send custom keys to the keyboard. We can ask the keyboard to, for example, which its name, and then send it. I don't know how to do that, but maybe it's possible to ask the host its name and send it back through USB to the firmware and store it into the firmware and say perform this attack if you are in this host, or perform this attack if you are in this host. But I didn't test that.
Okay.
So yeah, this is actually not a question, but Miasm is kind of painful to use. I think if you press F5 in IDA, it will tell you it's integer division instantly.
Sorry, I didn't heard.
I say IDA, the compiler, would recognize the integer division instantly because it knows about construct.
Yes, it's just a simple example to show the tools that I used during this analysis.
You are not forced to use Miasm. You could have done everything.
Thanks for the presentation. One question, how did you parse the data sheets to get the correspondence between the names and the addresses?
The PDF data sheet was transformed into a JSON representation, and I parsed the JSON representation to find the corresponding addresses and get the comment inside it. No problem.
Thank you for presentation. Do you have enough access to the USB stack on the keyboard to simulate any device from a USB? For example, can you simulate a mouse from a keyboard or something like this?
We have all the descriptor in the modifiable part, and you have the HID endpoint descriptor with all the descriptor, all the packets sent by the keyboard to the host. So I didn't try to do this, but if you modify them correctly with the correct specification of a mouse, I think when you branch the Sorry. When you connect the keyboard, it will present itself as a mouse.
I was wondering how much data you can actually store, and if you can store multiple passwords on the keyboard or not.
For this keyboard, I just used. Sorry. No, it's after. What? No. I look for the firmware map. No, I don't know where is the map. USB descriptor, like here. So I use only this space to store the firmware today, but we have space left here, so we can use this also to store again firmware, but it's only the memory we have in the chip. I didn't compute, but it's the space between this address and these addresses, and the space between these addresses and these addresses. And to store the password, we need, I think, I remember it's, I don't remember, it's 2 or 3 bytes to store the password, and then the password, and
thank you for your work. So here you trapped one keyboard. If you want to trap, let's say, other keyboards, so I guess from the same brand, it should be pretty easy if they share some firmware mechanisms. But like, did you look at other keyboards or?
I didn't trap any other keyboard for the moment.
All right.
But maybe I will try later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Marion.